Frank Harper, farm and ranch in Sedgwick, Kansas area, south central Kansas. My granddad pretty much started with the quarter of ground, and when Dad graduated from high school, he really wanted to farm, but the opportunity really wasn't there to the extent that he could do it full time, so he carpentered for 10 years as he kind of built up enough acres to establish himself as kind of a full-time farmer. And growing up, I just loved the whole idea about the farm and everything involved with it. So I went to college with the idea that that's where I was going to come back to, is the farm, and really didn't have any other intentions. And it's been a good decision. I've really enjoyed doing what I do. We grow in this area milo, wheat, soybeans, and corn. Roughly just under 3,000 acres. As far as the number of applications, that'll vary, but I would say on average, looking at for certain 2 to 3 on the normal program. Well, we farm a variety of different soil types. I know everybody says that's kind of common for most guys. They have a variety of different conditions, and we would have everything from some sandy ground that's even got a little gravel in it to some really heavy black gumbo type soils. Most of our ground is a silty loam or silty clay loam soil, so generally pretty good producing type ground. The sand, never a problem, but sometimes our really heavy gumbo type ground can be pretty challenging in the spring. Just pretty soft, and it's hard to stay on top, and that's kind of the conditions we're generally dealing with. I spent a lot of times looking in the papers as far as what used machines were available. We'd considered the pull type route, but quite honestly, I just felt like there was a trend there that in 4 or 5 years, or 2 or 3 years, that we went that route, there wouldn't be any interest from somebody that we were wanting to get rid of that machine. I think the trend was to go self-propelled, and if I was going to spend $30,000, $40,000 on a pull type machine, I felt like that was just pretty much lost depreciation. I wouldn't recover that cost. With this machine, we spent a little more money up front, but I don't think for what this machine has on it and what it'll do, I don't know that there's a machine on the market that can compete price-wise with the Apache. So when you didn't have a lot of options to compare for the amount of money that we were wanting to spend, I guess the decision to buy the Apache was a fairly easy one to make. I had attended a strip till field day and over around Hutchinson, Kansas, which is about 40 miles west of here, and one of the gentlemen that was on the tour had an Apache sprayer, and he just happened to have it parked out kind of in the line of equipment they were displaying, and he kind of talked favorably about it. So after that, we weren't real serious at that time about buying a sprayer, but I kind of kept that in the back of my mind. And when we got a little closer to wanting to make the purchase, I contacted Jason, and I went and looked at a new Apache on a dealership lot. And up to that time, we'd considered the idea of a pull type sprayer. That had been a consideration based on the fact that just less costs involved. And when I first saw the Apache, the 710, I just fell in love with it and decided that from that point on, the pull type route wasn't as much of an interest. It just seemed like it was a sprayer that would really fit our needs. You know, going over terraces, general slope landscapes, we would have some of that, and never have, as long as the ground's been solid, the machines seem to handle it just fine. I think the weight of the machine compared to other machines on the market, the lightness in it has really paid off for us, and that was part of the selling point for us in looking at the machine. Was we didn't want to carry any more weight out there than we needed, and yet we wanted a machine that was built strong enough to handle the conditions of rough ground, and you know, in some of our sandy ground, we'll get gopher holes and different things, and we didn't want to be able to bounce it out of the cab or break an axle when we hit those certain areas. So the gride's been great on any type of ground. you know, in talking prior to the purchase with Jason, he always said that the ride was good, and boy, I tell you what, it's just been a pleasure to run as far as the ride goes. I think it's certainly designed for the operator in mind, whether that be a farmer or commercial applicator. You know, we knew going into the purchase that we weren't buying a machine that we were going to need to put on 25,000, 30,000 acres a year with. I think the machine would handle it fine, but for what we need, it just seems like it's very well built, and still, like I said earlier, it only has on it what it needs to have on it, and everything that it needs is there, in my opinion. It's not any heavier than it needs to be. It's heavy enough that, like I said, it'll take the abuse in some field conditions and walk through them without any problem. When we kind of transitioned over to part of our program being no-till, when we had weeds growing and we probably should be out there spraying, we kind of just drug our feet. Well, we don't want to pay that application cost, and with this machine, it runs cheap, doesn't burn very much fuel. I would say more of our savings have been through doing a better job and being out there spraying when we need to, rather than just saying that doing it yourself is you know, going to just save you an abundance of money. It's taken time to spray, but it's been a pretty easy transition. It's kind of therapy in a way for me. I enjoy being out there, and whether it's late in the day when the normal custom application guys are going home, or wind's dying down, the timing's maybe better to get out there and do some spraying. I found that to be an advantage, and my timing, as far as time in my schedules, worked well at that time. You know, the thought of being able to purchase a new machine was not really on the front of our conversations. But when we started looking around, as I mentioned earlier, I just fell in love with this 710 machine. It just seemed like the machine that would fit us all the way around, and the mechanical drive was a big plus for us. Probably just the first time I sat in the cab of the Apache, it was just a very comfortable feeling. I wasn't intimidated by the switches and controls of a lot of the other machines, or about all the other machines that I'd looked at. Basically simple controls, great visibility, practical design. A lot of the other machines I looked at, you know, you had panels to remove for service and access, and you'd see lines and hoses come from one end and then they disappear in the frame or underneath covers, and this machine just wasn't that way. You could follow basically things from one end of the machine to the other, and you know, where we do most of our own service, that was pretty important to us to be able to you know, find what was wrong with the machine, because that hasn't happened, but you know, it's with anything mechanical, over time you have to fix something. So that was certainly a positive thing in the experience of buying the machine. We've had very little problems. One problem we had was we probably had about 100 hours on the machine, and I had one boom that wouldn't fold in. It was kind of erratic. Well, all I did, it goes back to the simplicity of the machine. I walked back to the rear of the machine, and I'm not a real mechanical inclined guy. I do what I have to do as far as mechanics go, but it was easy for me to trace what I could do. I was able to switch a couple wires around and get the thing fixed. In the meantime, talked to Simpson's, and they sent a guy out as soon as they could, and they diagnosed the problem. It was just a isolated wire that hadn't been crimped, I think, and that was excellent. Had one other time, it was a goof that I'd made. I'd unplugged my Raven system, and when I plugged it back in, I think I'd bent one of the prongs and called right out there, and they talked me through it, and I was back going in 30 minutes. It's just, yeah, just the service is excellent, and the simplicity of being able to do a lot of those things myself has been nice, really been nice. I have had a couple guys that were looking at other machines they'd heard we got an Apache machine, and kind of asked how we liked it. And they probably think I'm a salesman for Apache, because I really have put in a good plug for the machine, because you know, we're mainly, most of all of our farm equipment's green, and that's treated us really well, but I've really had a hard time saying anything bad about this machine. It's, you know, the simplicity of it, just I guess I would encourage anybody to just crawl underneath the machine and look. And if you don't think you can work on it, you know, there's probably not a machine out there that you're going to feel comfortable working on it. And it's just, that's the biggest part, I think. You know, we've all gotten used to open up our pickup hoods with, you know, from all you could see was an engine and a bunch of daylight underneath, to something that's so jam-packed that you can't even see from one end to the other. And this goes back to the basics, I guess, in some aspects. It's just seeing the simplicity of it. You know, walking into the cab, sitting down for the first time, having, you know, a controller and a joystick that everything's right there. It just, you know, we looked at some used hydrostat machines, and my gosh, you step in there and you know, there's switches and buttons and everywhere you go, and you look underneath the machines, and there's panels, and there's tanks everywhere, and hoses that you don't know where they go to or what they do, and this machine, you know, I think anybody within a 30-minute quick course can figure out how to load the machine and understand it, and in a day or two you're going like you've gone for years, I think.